When I was growing up, my house smelled like schnitzel, goulash, feijoada, and pine sol. I'm a first-generation American. My parents are Eastern European and met in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where 4 out of the 6 of us were born. My little sister Tina and I are the token Americans of the family. We were born in Chicago Heights. At any given moment, we had multiple languages shouted across the house, broken English, swear words in Portuguese, Russian, and German. The mix of dialects became the Kempa family language. It was a raucous household in Homewood, Illinois, but it was ours. Our crazy, and I loved it. One day, quite abruptly, for some reason, our family could no longer live in America. That was when my parents brought me and my 2 siblings to what was then Communist Poland in 1974. I remember the night we left O'Hare. My tias, TUs, all my cousins were with us at the gate, sending us off. I remember getting on the plane and being enamored by the flight attendants. They were so stylish and glamorous. They brought me cookies. I wanted to be just like them. Once we arrived at the Warsaw airport, we entered a large, dimly lit room with a catwalk above us. On the catwalk were Polish soldiers, all armed with what looked to be massive guns. I looked at my mom. I pointed at the soldier. She slapped my hand. She said, "Susanna, don't you look at them." And that's when I knew we weren't in Homewood anymore. After a car ride, we arrived in the village we would be living in, Sokolov Podlansky, and then to our new home, which stood behind large stone gate. As our groundskeeper, yep, we had a groundskeeper, opened them up, we drove to this enormous house. Let me tell you, we not only had a groundskeeper, we had a maid, a chef, and a nanny. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my dad moved us to Poland and got us super rich. Tina and I went to a local Polish elementary school, and I remember we had to take off our street shoes and put on soft-soled school shoes. My teacher wanted the students to brush their teeth with salt water every day. After the first time, my sister and I made a stand. We were never going to do that again, and we didn't. That was nasty. To say we stood out was an understatement. I learned the language pretty quickly. My dad used to say in 1 week, I was fluent in Polish. I don't know about that, but I do know I made lots of girlfriends. But Anya and Brozhina were my neighbors and my very best friend. They would come on over to our mansion and have Coca-Cola with us. You know what? Those girls had never had soda before, and we had a constant stream of Coke. While we were at school, my mom hung out with the help. Together, they drank coffee, smoked cigarettes. Our helpers became her close friends. And you know what? I don't think those ladies had ever smoked cigs till my mom came along. Every weekend, when the staff had their days off, our family went to Warsaw and always stayed at the very fancy Forum Hotel. After a few weekends, I was so comfortable in my hotel home, I used to run freely throughout like I owned the place. It was marvelous. I got to order chocolate sundaes by room service anytime I wanted. I felt like a legit Polish princess. Meanwhile, my dad was responsible for building a new factory nearby. My dad had a big heart, was quick with a joke, and he knew how to make things happen. He learned that the local Catholic Church was still damaged from World War II. And once learning this, he organized a construction crew and he fixed the steeple. The single act made my father and my family beloved and very well known. After a few months, my best friend Regina asked me kind of an odd question. She wanted to know if I felt lucky being in Poland. I kind of had to know why she was asking such an unusual question. And she said, well, in America, the cowboys and Indians are fighting. And she couldn't figure out how our family fit in. Clearly, we weren't Indians. And she didn't peg my dad as a cowboy. She even thought all we ate back home was beans and weenies. I had to let her know that the John Wayne movies that she had been watching weren't today's reality. You know, we kids, we were quite pranksters. We had a lot of adventures, very little supervision. One night, my dad invited his secretary, Helen, over for dinner. She'd come over before, and she was American like us. We also knew that Helen wore a wig. For days before Helen came over, my brother, Claudio, kept plotting that my sister, Tina, or I should pull off her wig during dinner. So when that night comes, Helen is seated next to Tina. I'm seated next to Claudio. My mom's on one side, my dad's on the other side. Claudio kept looking at Tina. Sure enough, she got up. She went right behind Helen. She pulled that wig right off. Off she went. Helen got up screaming. Claudio's laughing. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're in so much trouble. I look at my mom. She's falling off the damn chair. She's laughing so hard. Our family is so inappropriate. My dad comes back into the room, looks at the scene, goes to my mom, Genya. Helen swore she would never come back to our house. Yeah, true to her word. I've never seen that woman's face again. Oh, all right. So it's clear I had a little bit of moxie back then. My dad was the local hero. We were rich. My mom made friends with many of the locals. We were living our very best lives. So one afternoon, Anya and I went riding our bikes in city center, a city as big as Champaign. We had just come to a roundabout and saw the lights of a police car intending to pull us over. The policeman was really kind, right, going on and on about how unsafe it was for two kids to be out here alone. You know, legit, I just didn't care. So here's what I did. I told him I didn't understand Polish. I said, nic rozumiesz po polsku. You know, the policeman started laughing. I was like, okay, whatever. So when I got home, my dad left while lecturing me. Susania, if you're going to tell the police officer you don't understand Polish, don't say it in perfect Polish. I mean, I was 6 years old. Why? No one has ever asked, nor have I volunteered. Why? Why did my parents take their young family to Poland? Why could we no longer be in America? Six months before going to Poland, my beautiful and oldest sister Janet and her husband Dean left our house after having Sunday dinner on a cold January night. On their way home to Rolling Meadows, while driving on the tri-state, they had a tire blowout, hit a median going very fast, and both were killed instantly. My mother was devastated. So was I. My mom wanted to leave America because she was so heartbroken, and everywhere she looked, she was reminded of the sadness. I truly believe now that my dad sought the work opportunity in Poland because he would have the resources to provide his children and give my mom space to heal. And although I made my mom sound like a diva, okay, maybe she was a little, she was truly a woman destroyed from the tragic loss of her oldest daughter. And she clearly needed help raising the rest of us. I wish I could say that when we left Poland, she came back to the States and she was healed. She wasn't, and continued to struggle with depression throughout her life. Looking back, I was embarrassed and ashamed of my mom's unpredictable moods. I thought I was being judged because of her behavior. I was angry that once we came back to the States, my dad took another job away from home, but this time he left Tina and I alone with a woman that was ill. I spent the rest of my childhood trying to make my mom happy. Sometimes I could, but often I couldn't. I felt responsible for her anger and sadness, and at times, I have to say I've done the same. Relationships, work, motherhood. I could live from a place of guilt and shame and fear with a tendency to overachieve, all in the spirit of people-pleasing. It's taken me years of people-pleasing, and while making others happy is generally a good thing, going too far and for the wrong reasons left me emotionally depleted, anxious, and stressed. Guys, I love seeing people happy. It really is who I am. But now I've learned to set boundaries and realize my job is to make my own self happy. And we're all responsible for our own happiness. I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood, but man, do I have vivid ones of that time in Poland. My family and I were able to be spirited, have freedom to breathe. I look back now and clearly see that this period was my golden hour of my childhood. And you know what? Let's face it, the diva apple does not fall far from the diva tree.